Good evening, my fellow movie lovers. This is Stacia back for the next installment of my Stephen King Halloween-a-thon. Hi. I don't know why I decided to do that little intro, but yes, I'm here for the next installment of my Stephen King Halloween. And yes, Max is here with us again. And this week is going to be the 1984 movie Children of the Corn. This is based on a Stephen King short story. It is in his book of short stories called Night Shift. The book actually sort of appears in the movie itself. It is on the dashboard of two of the main characters' car as a little homage to King. And this will be a Stephen King story that brings along a little religious trauma. Who doesn't like a horror story that centers in some religious trauma? This takes place in the town of Gatlin, Nebraska. There's a boy preacher named Isaac. Very creepy looking boy. He gets all of the children in town, anybody below the age of 18, to kill every single adult in town. And it starts off with a bang of a murder scene where they murder all of the people in a diner in town. So it gets started off with a pretty high body count. Then 3 years later, after the event of them purging the whole town of adults, a young couple stops in the town of Gatlin, even though they were warned by the gas station guy after an incident happens where they run over a child on the road in the middle of nowhere. Keep in mind, this is pre-internet days. You could not call somebody. You didn't have road maps or anything. So that complicates a lot of things that in a story that would be solved by having working cell phones. So they ask for directions in the nearest town where they can get help. And the gas station attendant tells them explicitly, but not why, because he sort of has a deal with the children to not expose their secret or bad things will happen to him, but as explicitly as he can without betraying his pact with the kids. He tells them not to go to Gatlin. They end up getting lost, going to the other town and saying, let's go to Gatlin. There has to be somebody there that can help us. Of course, the town seems deserted, and basically they get trapped in Gatlin, and we get to see if this young couple make it out alive. So the young couple are Vicky and Bert. They are played by Peter Horton. For those of you who know, he's one of the 30-something actors. I believe he used to be married to Michelle Pfeiffer also. I think he was married to Michelle Pfeiffer when he made this movie. And the other lead playing his wife, Vicky, is Linda Hamilton. And this came out the same year that Terminator came out and made her a star. Sarah Connor, come with me if you want to live. Then playing the creepy child preacher is John Franklin. And the character of Isaac, although John Franklin was not a creepy child at all, he was a full-grown 24-year-old adult. To put it into perspective, he is about 3 years younger than Linda Hamilton. You also have two little kids in the story, Job and Sarah, who are reluctantly a part of the child cult just because they're from the town and their parents got murdered and they don't like listening to Isaac. They kind of work with Bert and Vicky to try to get out of this town. They're always trying to get out of this town. I mean, I would be too. And then last but not least, certainly not least, especially for this movie, he makes this movie how scary it is Courtney Gains playing the character of Malachai. He deserves, in my opinion, all the credit for making the movie as scary as it is. To this day, Courtney Gains gets told by people how frightened of Malachai they were. When he was making the movie, he was a teenager. His parents were even scared of him as the character of Malachai. He tells stories of going to a restaurant and people seeing him and screaming and running out because of how frightened they were of him because he was Malachai in Children of the Corn. His kids have now seen the movie. His kids' friends have seen the movie and still tell them how frightening he was as Malachai. So basically, this video is going to be a love letter to Courtney Gains for his betrayal of the character of Malachai. And I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that this is a great movie with, oh, it looks great and everything. This is a very low budget movie. You can see how low budget it is. The budget got reduced. It was supposed to be $1.3 million at first, which is still a measly budget in a fight with Stephen King where they had to pay him more or he was going to take his name off the movie. They had to reduce the budget by $500,000. And so this movie was made for a measly $800,000, which is it is surprising that they got as good of a movie as they did out of that budget, especially that a movie that has makeup effects, special effects, and horror elements in it. But there is a long tradition of horror movies that makes the most out of their small budgets. But this is one of the smallest, even for its time. But the return on investment of that $800,000 is probably percentage-wise one of the hugest returns on budget of any Stephen King adaptation. It ends up making over $14.5 million at the box office. And you got a pre-Terminator Linda Hamilton in this. I mean, this came out in March of '84, and it was October of '84 that Terminator came out, so good on them. And although it is Gatlin, Nebraska, this is filmed on location in Iowa. They needed access to a lot of cornfields, and Iowa certainly served that purpose for them. So Stephen King originally wrote the script for this movie, but people that gained the rights to the movie didn't like Stephen King's script. If you know anything about your Stephen King personal life history, this is deep in the times where he was in the throes of his heavy alcohol and drug addiction. And the script that he turned in, most of the script centered on Vicky and Bert arguing in their car also. So they found a lot of the script incoherent. That's when you have George Goldsmith coming in, going through the short story of the book, changing a lot of the aspects of the short story to make it a coherent storyline. The character of Job and Sarah were created for the film. They weren't in the original story. George Goldsmith said he felt it was somewhat hard to swallow that every child in town would willingly join Isaac and murder their parents. And he's the one that gave the little girl Sarah psychic powers to explain why Isaac, the leader, didn't want her killed. They also changed some of the timeline of the story. In the book, the first events of them purging the city of adults and the stuff that happens in the cornfield of the movie when Vicky and Bert come in happened 10 years later. He decided to shorten the timeline to 3 years later because he thought it was unrealistic that this town run by kids would be undiscovered after 10 years. Now, let me get back to my redhead bestie, Courtney Gains, or Malachai. Courtney Gains, to get the role of Malachai in this movie, he used a prop knife to hold a casting assistant hostage during the audition. Now, I don't know if that would work nowadays. It seems extreme, but it got him the job. And like I said, Courtney Gains makes this movie. I saw him for years, and all I could think of in any other movie he was in, including like The Burbs, Memphis Belle, Can't Buy Me Love. He even had a small part in Back to the Future. Every time I saw him pop up after this movie, all I could think of is that is Malachai. He is here to kill us. Every single time I saw him. One of the interesting things I find about the movie Children of the Corn is the fact that one of the producers of this movie is New World Cinema, but the person who ended up with the rights to the film, I shouldn't say the person, but the company that ended up the rights to the film and produced the movie is Hal Roach Studios. And if you're thinking, that sounds familiar, what is Hal Roach Studios? That is the same studios that brought you Our Gang, the Little Rascal shorts, and famously Laurel and Hardy. So that is who gained the rights and produced the movie Children of the Corn, which I just find every time I see this movie and the Hal Roach Studios credit pops up, it gives me a little chuckle. Now, this movie is directed by Fritz Keirsch, which is probably not a director that you're too familiar with. He's one of those, work by hire type of directors, never made it to the upper echelon of movie directors. He is best known probably for Children of the Corn. He also did a James Spader movie called Tough Turf. Those are probably his two best known works. But originally, they offered directing to Sam Raimi, who was off the success of his very low-budget Evil Dead success. But he wanted more preparation time for the film, and they couldn't give it to him because of the need of all the corn, and they needed the corn to be a certain height, so giving him more time just wouldn't work for the height of the corn they needed and the budget they had. So you might wonder, how was the movie of a cult of religious children killing all the adults received critically? Not very well. Roger Ebert gave this 1 out of 4 stars when it came out, so a thumbs down. He said in his review, by the end of Children of the Corn, the only thing moving behind the rows is the audience fleeing for the exits. But Rolling Stone magazine does rank Children of the Corn as number 7 on its list of top 30 Stephen King films. They called it a lean, brutally intense slasher film. And I agree with that. I think, I accept its low budgetness. It's kind of the children actors in it, the young children actors in it, kind of lack some acting skills, but it is effective at what it's trying to do, a horror movie. And a lot of that has to do with Malachai. Courtney Gains, my redheaded love, and Isaac. The two of them really bring this movie together and bring it home and make it worth watching. And this is a Stephen King movie that garnered the most amount of sequels to it. There is a tremendous amount of Children of the Corn sequels that started in the 1990s, but none of those sequels or remakes compares to the original Children of the Corn movie. It is the only Children of the Corn movie that I would actually recommend, that I actually think is scary. A large part, I'm going to say his name again, Courtney Gains. I love you. I never want to meet you because you will frighten me because you're Malachai, but I love you. But thank you for joining me in this installment of my Stephen King Halloween series for this year. I appreciate you watching the video. If you liked it, please remember to give me a thumbs up. Comment on the movie. Let me know what you thought of this movie. Did the character of Malachai scare you? Do you have a thing for Courtney Gains, but never want to meet the guy like me? And tell me, what is your favorite Stephen King movie? But thank you for joining me. I love you all. Bye.